Welcome to the Freight Agent Insider Podcast, hosted by Levi Van Pay.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Freight Agent Insider. It's going to be exciting today. Also a little bit sad today, and I'll tell you why in just a moment, but I am Levi. I'm your host. So the sad part of the day is the studio that you see behind me is going bye-bye, okay? We're upgrading everything. I was really hoping to have the new studio set and locked down today for this particular guest. We didn't quite get there. So somebody on YouTube said to me, Levi, is your podcast studio in your son's room? What are all these comic books on the wall? Joke's on you, sir. I don't have a son, but little Levi would probably be pretty impressed. Yeah, this is all. It's time to grow up a little bit. You know, humble beginnings. We're moving up in the world. But on the same token, guys, remember, you don't have to have everything figured out when you get something or you want to get something off the ground. Just start. Figure it out as you go. That's my advice for you today, unsolicited. Also very excited to officially announce the launching of the Freight Agent Expo in Las Vegas. It's going to be January 15th and 16th. That's obviously 2027. You can check out more about that at fax27.com. There's going to be a lot of cool guest speakers coming up. Already some have booked it. More information to come on that, but just putting out a little feeler on that. Please be sure to like and subscribe all of our channels: TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and we are now on X with 0 followers. So if you're on X, help us out. Leave reviews on those channels, comments, all that good stuff. Let's interact. And speaking of interacting, if you want to get involved in the show, go to freightagentinsider.com and go to the page, talk to us live, and you can ask questions directly from your phone. They're pre-recorded. We will ask them live on the show with our guests. All righty, everybody. Without further ado, true honor to have this fella on today. I want to introduce everybody to Craig Fuller.
Hey, Levi,
Craig, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Up here in Wisconsin, you are down in the Chattanooga area. Is that correct?
That is correct. We don't have the rains that you guys have enjoyed this this winter, early spring down here in Tennessee.
It's nonstop. Which is kind of weird. I would expect it to be more rainy down there, but
it's typically a monsoon to start the year. We typically have a monsoon season, but this has been one of the driest early springs that we've had in many years.
I'm in the wrong spot then, because we went from 15 feet of snow, negative 30-degree weather for 8 months, directly into massive deluge of rain. Yeah, I'm in the wrong
Although
spot.
Wisconsin has the highest consumption of alcohol per capita than anywhere else in the country. So
you don't have to tell me that. You don't have to tell me that.
I don't know if that's a good
Greg.
thing to be proud of or not.
It's not at all. Speaking of Wisconsin, man, so I was at the TIA conference in Phoenix, walking through the lobby, and there was a Freight Caviar, the newest edition, spring edition. I open it up, and of course, it's the man, the myth. He's right there. And the title kind of got me because it was about Green Bay. I'm a big Green Bay Packers fan. I'd love to just ask you. So I open it up, and I see something about Schneider, which is based in Green Bay. It's a big trucking brokerage company up there. Schneider is enormous, larger than U.S. Express, Covenant combined. If size alone determined innovation, density, Green Bay should have become a hub for freight startups. And I was immediately like, yes, why is that not a thing? It kind of happened probably in your neck of the woods in Chattanooga, and we're just up. Is it because the Green Bay Packers just can't win another Lombardi and nobody wants to come up here? What's going on?
Yeah, I think it has more to do with, Chattanooga. The reason it has such a large transportation, it's become a big epicenter for freight, is because there's a couple of catalysts. So we had the foundational elements, which was really my grandfather was sort of the patriarch of long haul trucking in this region, but also, he was a leader across the country. And my father went out and started US Express. My uncle started Covenant. And so you have this sort of foundational thing, but that doesn't explain why Chattanooga has this very fast growing ecosystem of companies. Something took place in 2014. There was a company called Axis America. It was a broker that was bootstrapped by a couple of friends out of college. They were in their 30s. And they started this freight brokerage in Chattanooga, Tennessee that Coyote came and bought. And that was challenging anytime you get bought by a bigger company. And then UPS comes and buys Coyote a year later. So you've got two different cultural changes. And so what happened is we had about 40 or 50 young people that left the business and went out and started their own, maybe one partner with another, but many of them actually started their own shop. And
Yeah.
you just had this massive proliferation. At the same time, you had this emergence of venture capital that was getting into the business. And so you had a lot of talent that was coming on into the market. A lot of folks went and started their own brokerage. Other folks started technology businesses. And, fast forward 10 years later, and we have one of the highest concentration of founders and startups in freight anywhere else in the country. And so, like, it's also not what there was a circumstance, there was an environment. It's also been some efforts by leaders like myself and others that have really put the stakes in the ground and told founders that if you're in freight and you're starting a business and you want to be around other people that are in freight, this is a great place to set up shop. Green Bay should be one of those. In fact, the Green Bay Chamber of Commerce has studied Chattanooga's model, has tried to emulate it. I think the challenge that Green Bay has is there isn't a leader, someone that's really the champion of that effort,
Right.
that's really focused on it. And down in Chattanooga, we've got myself and another person named Ted Ellie, who's the founder of Access America, who's been sort of championing this cause. And we've got a couple other founders that have been doing it as well.
So, I mean, not any true leaders leading the charge up here in the Green Bay area. Any thoughts of coming up here and joining us in the frozen tundra, Craig?
Yeah, I've come up to speak, and I've certainly come up for business. You guys do have, you have Schneider that's up there. You got Paper Transport, KBX Logistics is headquartered there. You also have Breakthrough, which is a tech startup, but it's a pretty small. It's a pretty small number of companies, and while Schneider is much bigger than the companies that I've mentioned, and this is true even of really cities like Northwest Arkansas,
Yeah.
is while there's these large businesses are there, that the wealth and the talent and the information and the systems are all sort of controlled by a very small number of parties. And so in Northwest Arkansas, you've got JB Hunt that's headquartered there. Obviously, Walmart's headquartered there. Tyson Foods headquartered there. PTSI or PAM Transit, USA Truck. These are some big companies, but because they haven't had a big transaction like we had in Chattanooga in the mid 2000s, and have a transaction with a bunch of young people, because it's one thing to buy a business of a 6-year-old, it's another to buy a business of a 30-year-old.
That's
Give
right.
them a couple $100 million, and then naturally they're going to go redeploy it. And that's exactly what I think happened. And so just like a compounding of things that came together.
On the topic of founders and leaders, which you most certainly are, and then kind of combining in younger people while we're on that topic, we do have a lot of younger listeners who are tuning in. A lot of them know who you are. There's probably a couple out there who don't. I'd love to back up just a little bit, Craig, and just ask you, who you are and kind of the family lineage.
Yeah, so I'm a multi-generational trucker. My grandfather was one of the patriarchs of long-haul trucking in the 1960s. He ended up selling his business, and firing my dad along the way. And there's a story about him firing my dad and my dad starting what is US Express and Covenant, which became, the 5th and 8th largest truckload carriers in the United States. So very large trucking, but they effectively bootstrapped those businesses in the 80s. My dad fired me about 10 years ago, a couple of times. I've been fired a number of times. I had a payments business that we sold to US Bank that did fleet cards, but then we kept our bank processing business. My dad got tired of putting money in that business. Technology businesses consume capital. As they're growing, they don't actually generate capital. And as they grow, they need more money. And my dad just didn't want to put any more money in it, so he fired me. That was an easier answer for him. That business is very successful today
Sure.
as well. But I, in 2016, went out and started FreightWaves. I was day trading unsuccessfully trucking stocks, believe it or not. US Press
Been
was not
there.
public, so there was nothing unbecoming in that. But I thought that I could have the edge of, well, I've got this lens because I talked to the family, I talked to my dad and my brother about what's happening in freight, and they know that, being big, they should know what's actually happening on the ground. And what I discovered, and this has been true ever since then, is that the bigger companies are often the last to know. It's counterintuitive. When a cycle changes,
Mm,
you always assume that the biggest guys in the market are the ones to see it first. That's not the case. It's actually the smallest guys in the market to see it first. They're the ones that have the least insulated business models. They have customers that because they're not bringing a ton of resources. I mean, these big companies are big for a reason. They've
right.
survived multiple downturns, multiple up cycles, multiple recessions, multiple pandemics, or whatever the circumstance of the day is. And the reason they're able to survive is they build their business so that when you have a down cycle, it doesn't take them out. And so you end up insulating your business from a lot of these trends. And
That's
that's
right.
by design. You can see it with FedEx. You can see it with UPS. You can see it in the railroads. Like, these companies who you think would know something are often the last to know when things start to fall apart. And so I realized that. I learned that the hard way in 16, and that became the inspiration for FreightWaves, which is we have a data product called Sonar. Have the world's highest collection of real-time market data,
Hmm.
everything from price to supply and demand metrics. And we go across all modes of traffic, so not just trucking spot. We don't get any of our data from load boards. It's all actual transactions across the economy, and that is part of our business. And then we have a media business, which we have an editorial team, which is analyzing news, reporting on news, but also taking this data that we've got and analyzing what do we think's happening in the market, and what do you think is likely to happen in the market. And so we tend to be on the front end of those cycles, for better or worse, because sometimes you can read it, you can read signs like, oh, this is the freight recession's over with, and then all of a sudden something happens like it was 2 years ago.
Right.
Uh, but you often will see things a lot sooner than other people will because your data is high frequency, and we tune it to that, and that's what we do. And so we are trying to help provide information for people that care about transportation, and they should care because their business is dependent upon it, so that they know how to respond to these markets. And we have a very high track record of getting it right. Occasionally we get it wrong, but I always say I want to be first, and I'd rather be wrong than be late. Particularly in
That's
a
right.
market as moving and as volatile as freight is, particularly trucking freight. It doesn't serve you any purpose to be right 6 months ago, or right about something that happened six
Absolutely.
months ago, because everyone lives in the market every single day. And so our job is to provide that information on the ground and interpret those signals so people can make better decisions.
That is incredible. And you mentioned FreightWaves. That's actually how I had first learned about you many years back. If let's say you're at a dinner party and you have to explain, somebody asks you about it, you have to explain what that is in 10 seconds. And you can obviously go longer than 10 seconds. But you talked a little bit about Sonar there. Can you elaborate a little bit more on FreightWaves?
Yeah, it's real simple. It's a Bloomberg terminal for freight. And that is usually how I describe FreightWaves. It's a Bloomberg terminal. Most people, have heard of a Bloomberg terminal or know
Right.
about Bloomberg. And so it's a pretty easy explanation for those that want a little bit like, what is a Bloomberg terminal? Uh, if they don't have familiarity with Bloomberg terminal,
Hmm.
then when we talk about high frequency data and stuff, they're probably going to struggle to figure out what any of that means. But effectively, it's
Right.
a bunch of, we bring all this data together and we provide a dashboard and a set of data that someone can use to make decisions. So no different than if you're trading crypto and you're seeing the crypto charts, these crypto data services. We're doing some of the same stuff that you would see through any of these kind of market data dashboards.
Yeah, love it. Craig, you being so ingrained on the trucking side, I mean, you have an entire family history around it. I guess without any charts, we don't need any of that. what's the pulse right now in the trucking industry, even compared to like a year ago? And I follow you on X. I keep up with a lot of what you're talking about on there. Is very, very interesting. I mean, what are we seeing? Are rates going up? What's the vibe?
This is the most bullish that I've been in perhaps forever. So COVID
And
was
you're not typically bullish like this, right?
well, I have been for the last couple of months. I mean,
Yeah,
it is interesting because again, because of what we do, I'm not if you go on X and you go onto social media, you have people who are always negative about something or always bullish.
right.
And because the freight market is incredibly volatile, things change all the time. I can go from being bullish to being negative, depends on what's happening. In fact, in 2022, we were perhaps the first, if not the first, people to call the freight recession as early as March of 2022. I got a lot of heat over that, a lot of anger. I had people say that we were being irresponsible for talking about a freight recession, that we were trying to help brokers out by making more money by lowering rates for truckers. I mean,
And you were
it
right
was a
on.
really interesting time because when you're early in a call, you're going to there's a risk that you're wrong, but it's also you're saying things that are counter to what people believe should be happening or have been happening. But
Absolutely.
wait, this is what we do. And so I became bullish, not on volumes necessarily, but we saw an interesting flip happen in November of last year. So this is around the holidays, November of 2025. It was October was pretty abysmal. Like freight was really, really soft and it was pretty depressing. And then all of a sudden it was like somebody flipped a switch. And I've seen this before. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen where you just see this massive change in the data. And every single time I've had that happen, or it's not gradual, it's sudden. I have to
Yeah.
call our data science team, and be like, "Hey, did something going on? Like, did one of our data partners cut us off, or was there a miscalculation or something?" Like you
Yeah.
want to make sure, and so we start back testing it. But we saw it in late November that something was starting to change the composure of the market, and of course, it was Thanksgiving holiday, and so you have some noise in there. You have Christmas, and then you had the big winter storms, and so we started to become pretty bullish because we'd see in the data as early as late November. A lot of people believe these were circumstantial elements. They were weather, they were holidays. This is the Amazon effect. We didn't believe that, and our data kept reinforcing that the market was tightening, that volumes were increasing, and now I would say I'm as bullish as I've ever been about freight. COVID was a weird time because while that was bullish, we knew that was a temporary phenomenon. Like we're not going to stay
Right.
at our houses and order all sorts of junk that we don't need constantly. It's the first time that we've seen what I call a normal economy uh, with the kinds of changes that we're seeing and the level of bullishness. And I think that means this cycle will go on a lot longer. The other thing that's really interesting right now is we're seeing freight come from the center of the country and not the coast. And so we've been tracking freight data since 2018. I've been in it my whole life. It used to be growing up when I was, working in my dad's business,
Mm-hmm.
you would see the Midwest and the Southeast were sort of the freight drivers of the United States.
That's right.
And the coast, you would come, it was certainly a part of the story, but they weren't the main act. The main act was the Rust Belt, the Midwest. Since Sonar has existed, that hasn't been the case. In
Interesting.
2018, when we launched it, it was all the coast. And so what was happening is we were receiving imports from overseas because we track container imports. We receive these
Right.
imports that show up at the ports. And then from the ports, from the coast, the truckers and the railroads would take that freight into the center of the country. So
Right.
effectively, the center of the country, Wisconsin being the center of the country or anything on I-35 was receiving
That's right.
freight, not producing very much of it.
Right.
We're seeing something completely different now. And what we're seeing is that the center of the country, the Heartland, the Rust Belt, is actually driving the freight market. It's the first time in history that I've seen it since we've been tracking this data. And it certainly feels more like my dad's economy than the one that you and I have known for the last 20 years.
It's incredible. So where do you foresee this heading in the next 5-10 years?
Well, I would say I'm incredibly bullish, and there's a lot of
Love
reason
it.
to be bullish. And so we just got some really nice economic data. So it's interesting because I've been talking about the industrial recovery for a couple of months. I think I did a video of it. I believe it was in February, where I think it was late February, maybe early March, where I was like, look, something is different here. This is the center of the country that is pumping freight. It's unusual. I got a lot of views, and we are seeing an industrial renaissance. And this was early, and I got, on X, you get a lot of heat, and you can say something. People
Yeah.
are not short of opinions.
Yep.
But what we're seeing now is that the Wall Street Journal picked it up this past weekend. Bloomberg's chief economist, who I'm good friends with, and I had been comparing notes. They're starting to see it in their data. The PMI, which is the Purchase Managers Index, which is provides a survey of people that are in supply chain and manufacturers. It's the most bullish PMI report that we've seen in over 4 years. And so I think it's pretty clear that the industrial segment of the economy is ripping right now. And because our data is high frequency, which means we will pick up things months before everyone else does. I would say that we're just this economy, this recovery is just getting started. So anyone's thinking it's a flash of the pan, that war is going to kill the economy, whatever you're sort of whatever you're coping with to sort of dismiss it, rest assured this is absolutely real.
I love hearing it because you have been regarded by some, like you said on X, there's no shortage of opinions. You've been regarded as a perma bear for a long time. So it's incredible to hear this flip. Economy related, we did have a listener question for you, Craig. Take a listen.
Hey, Craig. If the economy has taught us anything the last couple of years, it's that we can be vulnerable looking too far down the road. What are some opportunities that you see for the remainder of Q2? What are some vulnerabilities that you see might hit us in the mouth for the remainder of Q2 in the freight market?
Yeah, it's a great question. Ultimately, I think industrials are where there's going to be the opportunity. So what is actually driving freight right now is it's flatbeds. You see it with flatbed data. That's the industrial trucking. I mean, majority of the stuff, if it's not housing, it's industrials. It's the energy segments. And so it's petrochemicals. One of the interesting things that's happening is this war is actually bullish for freight. And I for risk of sounding like a warmonger, because I've been accused of that, of being heartless, it's true that when the United States gets into a war, because we're not fighting it at home, that actually drives a lot of industrial activity. And so I don't have anything, there's nothing right now that I believe would kill the recovery short of a black swan event like a nuclear device. Iran launches a nuke into Europe. I don't even want to know what happens there, or something catastrophic. We have another COVID-like incident. So there's always these black swan events that are always risks to the model. Trade policy is one thing. Donald Trump's trade policy, and I've said this publicly, what he did last year was one of the worst industrial policy decisions I've seen, because we see it in the data.
Really?
Completely wiped out a lot of manufacturing and put businesses on hold. But his new energy policy, he did an executive order on Monday to drive to lower permits. It's under the Defense Production Act, and it will drive infrastructure for energy. And this is desperately needed because we've got all these data centers coming online that's going to produce consume electricity. If we're going to build factories, you're going to have electricity. So we need energy desperately. And I think the president probably did the best possible thing to drive industrial. So you have this sort of like Donald Trump presidency, you get both sides. For better or worse, it happens quickly. In this case, I think it was quick. In fact, I would argue that the war has done more to balance global trade by using American exports of energy and chemicals and all the stuff that goes into that than frankly any tariff.
That's an interesting take, and you don't sound like a warmonger by stating. I think there's a lot of truth to that. So on that same vein, let's kind of talk about we've been talking about the Midwest a lot. I guess, what does this mean for American families in these regions when we talk about this boom and manufacturing picking up in these areas?
I mean, it means job opportunities. I mean, blue collar jobs. It's interesting because the employment data isn't great. It's not robust, we'll say. Been like concerned about job losses.
Right.
And I think, first of all, manufacturing job losses, first of all, it's a lagging indicator. So to be clear, because a lot of the people who are sort of countering my bullishness on manufacturing are using employment data to push back. But what I would
Sure.
say is we are seeing very robust activity. Jobs should follow. Like we should see over the course of the next couple of months as jobs follow. The other thing is like the AI trade is real. These
That's
days,
right.
this is not a bubble. It's actually happening. And we are going to see a shift in our economy. And I think it makes those white collar, college educated jobs harder. I think it's, my son is in college. He's 18. He's a freshman in school. And, my advice to him is become an expert at something because if you're a generalist, when you go to school, you're partying, you're doing all your things.
That's right.
When you get out of school, you kind of like, I'll figure it out. I don't know that you're going to be that useful for a future employer if you don't have a specialty or a special level of expertise. So my advice to him is become an expert, bring something to the table, become more knowledgeable than anyone else. And I think there's going to be a shift in this economy. And I think it's going to be somewhat tougher for a lot of white collar families because they're going to lose some of these opportunities.
Yeah, with the jobs data, what I find interesting about that on the topic of AI is, as an example, I saw Microsoft. It was yesterday or today. They announced that up to 7% of their staff they're allowing to retire early. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the package is, but AI is impacting that. So, as I guess for those that are kind of countering your now perma bullishness. The AI, it seems like that is a real factor in white collar jobs just kind of disappearing. And how does that affect the long term outlook of the economy if there's just less people working?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is well outside my lane. I'm not a labor economist. I do talk to labor economists. So I'm going to be careful to say
Yeah,
if the doom and gloom sort of folks that are like, okay, this is going to wipe out 20% of the jobs in America. I won't pretend to weigh in on that because I don't have any data that suggests it. I will say if you look at history, you even when electricity was around when it first came out, people were talking about the end of jobs, and we've seen this throughout history. Is that the
yeah,
businesses find a way. Your point about Microsoft, Meta announced 10% of their layoffs of something like 10,000 jobs. Companies are definitely going to shift jobs into something new. But I actually believe as an entrepreneur, it also opens up opportunities. It creates opportunities, and I think the risk for the folks that I read and pay attention to, the risks is that this happens so quickly that we don't have enough time to sort of to the new types of jobs and the new types of economy doesn't show up fast enough. I don't know. It's an interesting question, and like I said, it's well beyond my expertise. But I would say for those that are in freight, the nice thing about white collar software jobs is they don't move a lot of freight, and they will certainly impact consumers that will have to find other jobs because if there's been this great report on Wall Street by Centrini, which was basically like if we all lose our jobs, we're not going to buy anything, and
it was
therefore
a great
production
piece.
goes to zero. You know, the reality is like the stuff that
Very
does
doom and gloom.
matter. What's that?
Very doom and gloom piece.
It's very doom and gloom, and it's very easy to do that. But the stuff that does matter is energy, natural gas, oil, power, trucking. Like these things are not, you can't AI moving cargo from point A to point B. And so I actually think the jobs are pretty robust in the world that we care about in freight, manufacturing, goods consumption, uh, is going to be pretty robust for some time.
Yeah, I believe the same thing. You made a great point about throughout history, it's like every new technology that's emerged. Everybody said it's the end of this job market. Think of elevator operators back in the 20s. We don't have those anymore, and they just moved on to do something else. It happens all the time. So let me ask you this, Craig. For your son, he's in college. Are you Do you have any thought of like steering him into logistics, or like versus like a Meta or a Microsoft it seems like they're constantly laying off workers. Do you kind of like say, hey, maybe stay away from tech, which is
Well,
kind of crazy to think?
my advice to my son was two things when he was going to school. I said, look, there's two things you should do. One is learn about finance, because that is the language of the economy. Like if
That's
you learn
right.
about finance, whatever happens, finance is a permanent part of our economy. And so learn about finance. That's the first thing he should do. The second thing that he should do is lean into AI. View it as an opportunity because it is going to be creating jobs. Lean into it, become knowledgeable and proficient, and then that opens up opportunities. Recently, he's come to me and he wants to become a venture capitalist, which I've tried to steer him, talk him out of that, but
Yeah.
he's got his head set on it. And I said, well, Max, and he goes, he wants to work at a VC firm. I said, well, you're kind of useless to a VC firm. I said, first of all, those jobs are hard to get, highly coveted jobs. And I said, you're kind of useless because you don't bring anything to the table. You have no experience. You've never started a business. You don't understand finance yet. You're a freshman in college. And even if you go and get a finance degree, you're still an entry level finance kid. I said, look, my recommendation is become an expert at something. So become the
Right.
smartest person about a topic. And so he would call me and say, oh, I'm going to learn about energy, or I'm going to learn about AI. I'm going to become the smartest guy in AI. I said, no, you're not, dude. You don't live in Palo Alto, California, where all the action is. And so finally he came around to supply chain, and I wasn't trying to steer him. I'm just, and I have the advice to my son, and I would say this to any young person that's thinking about becoming an agent, or anyone for that matter, is what you realize as you get older, so much of life is your network, and
Yeah.
life is hard, and it was going to get harder. We
Yeah.
talk about AI, it's going to get harder to differentiate yourself, because now knowing something doesn't, AI is going to liberate pockets of information. Like it's getting that good to where it actually plays the role of expert, and oftentimes knows more things about freight than I do about topics. I use it as a original resource. It's weird when it
Yeah.
quotes me back, and I'm like, no, I want an outside perspective. I'm not
Right.
looking for you to say per Freight Alley or per Craig Fuller. I want
Right.
another source. But it's getting that good. So it means that if you have subject matter expertise, you're not that valuable in itself. But what does make you valuable is your network, and having unique insights and having unique context of things, really deeply understanding and mastering a topic, and then having a network to draw on. So when my son said he wanted to do supply chain, I said, that's the right path. Because when I was in college, when I first started out my career, I didn't want anyone to know who my dad was. I was
Mm.
ashamed because I thought it would define me as, well, you're just successful because you're a Nepo baby, and your
Mm.
dad, the reason you
Right.
do anything is because who your daddy is. And as I got older, I actually realized that was a compliment, not an insult, in the
Yeah.
sense that, yeah, heck yeah, I have a network, and heck yeah, my dad is a very successful entrepreneur, and I might as well use that. And I think that's what I've doubled down on. And I've told my son that, is like, look, I think you should own, like, you have to chart your own path. I can get you the meetings, I can get you the introductions, but you got to do it when you're in the room. Just because I can make a phone call to get you in to introduce you to someone doesn't mean they're going to take you very seriously. He's got to do the work. But
That's
it's the
right.
same thing in business, the same thing in sales, the same thing in becoming an agent. Everything is about relationships. And I think in freight specifically, we tend to be more transactional than, particularly brokerage freight tends to be more transactional, whereas those relationships are built over a lot of seasons,
Mm-hmm.
and people
Yep.
remember when it matters and when you did something for them, when you didn't benefit. And that's a hard thing, I think, for people in freight to realize. But ultimately, that's the advice I've given my son.
It's very profound. I'm glad that we touched on that because we talk a lot about relationships on here and the importance of it. So you driving that nail home, I think that's going to stick with a lot of people. And I'm sure for your son and maybe for you too, it felt like these are big shoes I have to fill from my father. Maybe your son feels like that, but I agree. he has an opportunity, he has a leg up, and you lean into that, and your network really does become, he has to build it. That's where the value is going to come in.
Well, I think as I get older, you start to learn that so much in life is about access, and it's whether you're bidding on a piece of business because you're friends with the traffic manager, you're getting into a program. It's about having access, and access is driven by relationships, and oftentimes these access is driven by the credibility, your own credibility. But if you don't have credibility into a network, you should go find people that are credible to no different than listening to your show and reaching out to you, and you're helping people along the way. There's power in that. And I think that's what is the most defensible part, because humans are inevitably wanting to connect with other humans.
That's right.
And in an AI world, like I said, knowledge is a commodity of sorts. It's I have unique context and I can trust this human. There is a person on the other side that I know this person. I mean, one of the things I think about a lot is, in the old days, I would get an email and someone would write, "Hey, I heard you on this podcast," or I saw that you did this press release. The problem is AI bots know that stuff. So now
Right.
when I get those emails, I actually think they're junk because they're programmatic. I want to see grammatical
Yes.
errors and typos.
Yes.
Everyone knows that my X account is authentic because I make a lot of spelling errors and typos. Um, and I think in a world where we are searching for authenticity through relationships, it's going to be even more important.
We're getting close to wrapping this up. I will talk to you all day. I have 15 more questions, but I promise the listeners that we are not going to. We all have the attention span of a goldfish nowadays, so we're not gonna do too much more. I did want to ask you though. I mean, as we're talking about like navigating this world, following in your father's footsteps. Your son is following in your footsteps. For the younger listeners out there, you've started multiple companies, some succeeded, some failed. What's the thing you had to learn the hard way that you could tell, or you would tell rather, the younger version of yourself?
Yeah, it sounds cliche, but nobody cares. And here's the thing that I
Yeah.
would say is, like, I'm in media, so I see a lot of press releases. We cover stories of people at their worst day and at their best day. Like, that's the deal of being in media. Nobody cares about your average day. They want
Right.
they want the dirt, or they want to celebrate. And people
Yep.
care far more about. So saying in media, if it bleeds, it leads, is absolutely true. Is a press release that's
Wow.
positive
Yeah.
will get 1/100th of a press release or an article that's salacious.
That's too
But
bad.
one of the benefits of social media and modern media is people have very short attention spans.
Yeah.
And because we have short attention spans, it means the ability to have an error, to make a mistake, to screw up, people forget it really quickly. And so the advice that I would make to myself and to anyone starting out or at any point in their career is that take more shots on goal, take more risks, humiliate yourself, do it in public, because nothing is going to matter. No one's going to remember that. No one's going to remember that you did a video that nobody watched. No one's going to remember that you said something on social media that was dumb. And don't use AI to do it either, because everyone reads this stuff and it's AI slop and we tend to ignore it. Write something authentic. And I think start a business, take some chances, take some risks that you haven't taken, because if you fail, no one cares. And I think it's hard. We all have egos and we're all trying to protect our egos. And I certainly was trying to protect my ego when I was younger. And I had when my dad fired me in 2014, it was both personally painful, but also I felt humiliated. And I went into a pretty significant depression over it, because I was like, I have failed. I've let my dad down. I've let my family down. And people are going to ridicule me. And the reality is none of that really happened. And now I realize I don't care. So it's just a different world where you start to realize that you shouldn't be defined by your failures. And what I'll say is, history tends to rewrite itself. People remember the last thing you did, not the thing you screwed up 3 years ago. By the way, Jeff Bezos created a cell phone that was a miserable disaster. No one remembers that he created a cell phone that was a miserable disaster. Like we've all moved on. Elon
That's
Musk
right.
has failed multiple times. His rocket launches, I think, failed something like 60 times before they get it right. And that's the reality. Is just you have to keep going. And I think as someone who, the advice I would give my son is just continue to go at it because nobody really cares.
Yeah, I think Maya Angelou had, very loosely paraphrasing this quote, nobody remembers what you did, what you said, they remember how you make them feel. And in an AI driven world, maybe connecting with each other and doing something more, having more of a personal touch does mean more than, just,
Well, I think relationships come that much more important, and
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to the TIA conference or you have to go out to the
right.
events. Like I'm in events business. You've got an event coming up in January, so we want people going to the events, but you can still be very successful by not going to the events but showing up. Some of my best friends that I talk to every single day, I've never met in real life.
Yeah,
They're
me
my
too.
ex-friends. And I think that's okay. Eventually we'll meet up and become even better friends, hopefully. But
Yes.
but you know, I think getting yourself out there, taking shots, reaching out is okay, and just realizing that nobody cares.
Nobody, that's such great advice, because, hey, listen, I mean, even on, my kind of hangout is LinkedIn. Talk about it all the time. Me and John Rogers were just recently talking about finding your voice and having an authentic voice. People don't want the AI slop and regurgitating that over and over. It's it's hard, but you got to put yourself out there. Make mistakes. You can say something stupid. I'd rather hear somebody say something completely asinine versus the AI slop.
I mean, look, if you're gonna put yourself out there, you're gonna have people come attack you. And there's people who don't like me, people who I've never met that have strong opinions about me because they post about me constantly. And I'm like, what is this person's problem? I've never met them. People are like, what did you do to this? I've never met them. And there's quite a few large lists of that. The reality is that comes with the territory.
It
But you
does.
realize that does not define you. That has not impacted anything. I used to worry when we would come out and say something and we got it wrong,
Mhm.
or we said something that wasn't popular. I was worried it'd impact my business, and it did the opposite. Is that like most of the times people were talking about this thing. In fact, a friend of mine runs an influencer data company, and they track influencers where, let's say you're Nike and you're wanting to launch a new shoe, and it's like, I'm making it up, camping gear or something. And you're like, who are the big camping influencers? And so they track it. Or McDonald's wants to launch a campaign. So his business goes out and tracks social media data. And they basically use this as a way to help big corporate brands reach a very small segment. And I asked him, I was like, dude, what do you do about your haters? Like, what do you do about the people who are constantly just going at you and grinding you and trying getting under your skin?
Yeah.
And he looks at me and goes, those are your most important parts of your audience. I said, what are you talking
I
about?
love
He's
it.
like, that is what drives the algorithm.
Wow.
It is true to say there's no such thing as bad media. Is sort of the same concept in social media world. Having more content, having people talk about you is unfortunately a derivative of being successful.
Yeah.
And I could name, I mean, if I name Taylor Swift, there's people who will like, you know,
Yeah.
that absolutely hate her. Kanye West, Mr. Beast. You can go through the list of celebrities, and we all have strong opinions about these people. But I think most of us, if we're being honest, would give anything to have an opportunity for just one day to live in that life with that person. I'm not saying you want to trade your life for Taylor Swift's life or Mr. Beast's life, but I think it would be kind of fun to be uh, that person for one day, just to live in the life of
Absolutely.
that person. Andrew Tate, probably the most polarizing
So polarizing.
guy, and yet you're kind of like, there was a video today that I was kind of like, that's kind of funny. Like, it comes with the territory. Donald Trump. And now I'm not trying to get political. I mean, you could argue the same thing about, you know, uh, Kamala. Like, there was nothing. Yes, she miserably flamed out of the election, but her career prospects have not, like, she's now very marketable. She's getting $100,000 booking fees for public speaking. I'm sorry that, like, I don't, like, this is the nature of being famous. You're going to have a lot of people who hate you. And so just get out there and accept it.
Absolutely. When before we hopped on the show, Craig, we were kind of talking about like pre-posed questions. You're like, nah, just riff. Let's just have a conversation, which I love, which is how I normally handle this. But I did just, I put in Craig Fuller in Google, see what pops up. And the first thing that pops up is like this Reddit thing of like a whole negative Craig Fuller thing.
I know.
I'm just like,
I have learned to stay. So I had a friend of mine who advises a lot of politicians.
yeah,
Big government, big politicians. And he told me the first thing, don't read your press. And my wife, right out of college, worked for Martha Stewart.
yeah.
And her job every single morning was to go through and scan the news. And this is Martha Stewart. She'd been out of prison. She had recovered from that. But every single morning, they would print off every news article that was about her. And they had 3 stacks. They'd have the stack that they would give her, which was all the great stuff. They'd have the stack that they would ditch that was just trash. And then they would have the stack of stuff that they needed to respond to. And that was the way celebrities insulate them. Because
I love it.
Look, we're humans. No one likes being talked about negatively. And what it does, it creates this fight. And so the way to avoid it is just to not participate. And so that's
Absolutely.
what I do. Is I know it's there. I'm okay that it's there, but I don't pay any attention to it because it doesn't do anything for me.
That's right.
So if someone's, shit posting me on X or LinkedIn, I'm going to block that person because I don't care. Like if they have a reasonable counter argument, fair. But if they make a personal like insult as they're saying it, they're automatically blocked, and I forget they exist.
You forget they exist. We'll end it on this. I'll quote Chris Jolly, the freight coach. He was on the show and he said something that stuck with me. He said, at any given time, when you're in this world of media, at any given time, 50% of people love you, 50% of people don't like you. You have to phase out that 50% that don't like you. Focus on the people that do like you. And you're an enigmatic figure, Craig. I love what you post. Just because some people don't. Yeah.
I would say it's probably 10% of the people hate you. They're the loudest. 60% of the people just don't care.
Yeah.
And 30% of the people like what you post. And look, if you could accomplish that in life, you're okay. Getting 50% of the people to like you or hate you is actually, that would be a heck of an accomplishment. Because like, that means that the majority of people care. Most people just don't care.
Exactly. And that, yeah.
Someone took the time, think about this. Someone took the time, or a lot of people took the time to have an opinion to write about me, which is,
those Reddit posts, they were like a mile long. Like,
not something I'm proud of, but like it exists.
It's awesome, man. I love what you've created. You've done a lot of amazing things. The family history, it's great. We're at about 50 minutes, Craig. I will talk to you all day. I'll let you go. I know you're a busy man. I want to say thank you personally for showing up today. It was a lot of fun. I hope everybody had a great time listening. We'll be back next week, everybody, at 9 a.m. Central. More freight goodness. Thanks again. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Levi.
Thank you for watching the Freight Agent Insider Podcast. Like us and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and LinkedIn